Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got some special guests joining us today.
Yes, indeed.
We got the good brother Omar Epps.
Yes, indeed.
And now we have director and writer Charles Murray as well. Welcome,
Charles,
brother.
what up, King?
Thank you. Good.
They are executive producing and starring in the upcoming movie The Devil You Know.
Yeah.
What's that about?
It's a film about, I think it's a beautiful piece that Charles constructed, wrote and directed it. It's a film about family. It's a film about brotherhood, morality, redemption, and it's intentionally told through the lens of our blackness, black and brown people. And I'm just really excited. I've been calling it an experience. It's not just a film because it's one of those joints, you know, people talking back to the screen after the movie ends. The discussions are happening. You know, what would you do about this and this, that, and underneath it, it's a bit of a crime drama as well.
How did the idea for the movie come about?
20, 30 years ago, just watching my family and thinking that, oh, these people would be good for like a movie or something like that. And then the conversation about snitching came up. And I had a long conversation with my brother, and I was like, oh, okay. So if I was to do a movie about snitching, it would normally go, I'm trying to make, you know, like somebody snitches and then your friend tries to stop you. And I was like, well, what would that dynamic be if it was the family that had to like deal with it?
Oh, you mean like somebody in the family snitch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that happen to you? Was that the situation?
No. I mean, you know, but I come from Gary, Indiana, you know, which was the murder capital of the United States for 10 years. So, you know, there was a whole lot of, you don't tell on anybody, you don't do this, you don't do that. And I'm like, yeah, but what if they did something heinous? You know, and the fact that that was always a big conversation was interesting to me, and what would lead somebody to do it.
What are your thoughts on snitching individually? We start with you, Charles.
You know, it's a case by case. You know, I feel like anybody who draws a hard line, what if you got to think about what if that was your family that something had happened to? You know, so but if it's my brother, I'm going to have a lot of thoughts about it. You know, if it's somebody that I don't know, I'm going to be like,
What do you think, Omar?
He already pointed me out. I think it runs deep in our community because it really goes. If you think about it, it goes back to slavery times and us, Jim Crow and all of that, like trying to look out for each other, and we handle and police our own. You know what I'm saying? But where we are now, we're in 2022 or whatever. It's like this, that. I know it's the whole conversation in the culture about if it's a civilian or this, that, and the other. It's like, yeah, I think everything is relative to the circumstance. Nobody knows. That's what's exciting about this film is it's exploring this theme of what do you do in that moment. Nobody knows what they're gonna do until they're faced with it. So even people, you have these people that's, you know, I'm against the death penalty and da-da-da-da-da. And with respect to them, until something happens.
To somebody you love.
I always say that.
And then you might have a different view on that. You know what I'm saying? So it's I think it's relative to what that person is going through, and you know what I'm saying? So obviously it's like, yeah, if you in the street game and da-da-da-da-da, yeah, there's rules that apply. So that's easy. That's the easy part. But if you rob Miss Johnson up the block and, you know, these young cats out here, you know, they got to tone it down a bit. You knock over the head, she's a 70-year-old lady, and you da-da-da-da, and somebody saw.
Yeah.
You know, what you expect it to be.
Yeah, I'm all about crime prevention. That's what I call it. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know why civilians have that conversation. Like, what does it matter if I see something and I say something? I should say something. Like you said, if I see an old lady get knocked upside the head, if I don't intervene myself, if I see the dude running up the block and the cops coming, you see somebody, you goddamn right I saw somebody. He went that way. He was wearing such and such.
Especially because you don't want the cops to stop at you.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. To be fair, it's like I think there's a lot of confusion amongst the culture and the community because there's been instances of innocent people trying to do the right thing and police go with them.
Right.
Yeah,
you know
that's
what I'm
true.
saying?
That's
So
true.
when you growing up watching police shoot other police that's undercover just because of the color of their skin, it'll affect your mind on, oh, maybe I should now. When we was coming up, if somebody knocks Miss Johnson over the head, we go chase him down the block,
Right.
beat his ass, get her purse back, and this, that, and the other. But now they playing with, you know, these weapons or whatever, so that's a whole different thing. You follow me?
That's another angle too, though. It's like we don't, in our community, we're taught not to like police. So even if we see somebody do something foul, we're not gonna cooperate with the police just because they're the police.
Right.
You know,
Well, a lot of times we get harassed. Like I remember seeing somebody get hit by a car on Queens Boulevard, and I called police. Hey, someone got hit, and the way they harassed me, it made me feel like I did the accident.
Yeah.
What were you driving? Where were you? Where were you leaving? I'm like, none of that matters. I just seen a brother get hit. Like, get him in an ambulance, and because of that, now if I see somebody else get hit, will I call the police? Because the way they harassed me, came to my crib and all that, I'm like, I'd have to take a second to think about. Would I help that person? Would I call the police for that person again? You know what I mean? So it is what it is.
It's great that you said that because that's at the crux of it. You know what I'm saying? Like that feeling is like, and you were trying to do the right thing, be a good Samaritan. You know what I mean? And it's a whole. We all know it's a whole layered thing, and these dudes is trained to to harass you,
Right.
Because they coming in, they don't know what's what. It might have been him, and
And then to complicate matters, his character is the black sheep of the family, right? And somebody who's done jail time and is recently out of rehab, still in rehab actually.
Yeah.
And so he has been the problematic issue in the family. So they've surrounded him, and then that's put on him to decide whether he needs to do it or not. So
Where do you find the time to do all of these movies, man? You're always doing a movie, doing a show. Like, when do you find the time, bro?
I would throw that back on you. When do you find the time to do what you do? I know how hard
And
you guys work.
got a family, you got kids.
Yeah, you got it. It's dedication. We got this one shot at this thing we know is life, and this is what we're here to do. You know what I mean? I'm just so thankful, and I feel so blessed every day because I actually love this. Like I love, this is my passion, and I feel like it's bringing me to my greater purpose. And for me, the thing that drives me is the power of imagery. I finally understand it now. After 30 years of this career, the power of imagery is everlasting. It's gonna outlast me. Everything that I've been a part of, every script that he wrote, and films that he directs or TV shows is gonna outlast us. But it can impact the future generations. You know what I mean? The same way that for me, remember last time I was here, talking about the book or whatever, being a fatherless kid, when I'm watching Good Times, I'm like, oh. But at least the pops is there. I know they in the projects and they poor. And then the Cosby Show come, and I'm like, ooh, they got bread. Everybody laughing. There's always food on the table, and she's a lawyer, and he's I can do that. You know what I mean? And it inspired me as a young boy. Like, okay, that's a seed planted while I'm in the mud, still coming up. And I want to be a part of that for the future generation. So that's what drives me.
I'm shocked that you say you just realized the power of imagery, because I think about all the movies I've seen Omar Epps in growing up have influenced me in some way.
Impact, yeah.
I went and got a 38 snub-nosed pistol because of Juice. You know what I mean?
That wasn't a positive influence.
But I'm just saying.
From him, right?
I'll say another one. People might get mad at this, but The Wood, to grab the butt game. Like,
What? Where you going with this?
I'm just saying.
This guy always goes left.
I'm just saying those were things we saw in movies that
No, that was
influenced
in
us.
athletics. That was in the 70s and all that. Right. God.
The Wood, you remember The Wood?
I do.
When they was like, I bet you won't grab a butt, I dare you to grab a butt.
Oh, okay. I get it. Okay.
What y'all thought I was talking about?
I'll never know it because you always go somewhere left. So
Never know.
I
was like, hey.
The Wood, but damn.
yeah.
Never know.
No. But you know what? But think about this. Like, I did Juice when I was 17 years old.
Damn.
I was a baby. So I didn't know everything that was happening was surreal to me. So I'm not thinking in those moments, 30 years from now, people still going to be talking about this. You know what I'm saying?
Watching it.
You know who probably did think that was Tupac. He was only 2 years older than me. You know what I'm saying? But he was just plugged in a way of everything that we're doing as artists is going to outlive us. I didn't get that back then. It's like just now catching up to me like,
Wow.
And that's been a part of my journey. But, even with Charles, like, this guy's a genius, and I mean that in a literal sense. And this was an 8-year journey for us. And for him, he just told you, he had the idea 25 years ago. That's crazy. Like, how does this film not get made? We have legend Glenn Turman, Vanessa Bell Calloway, obviously Michael Ealy's my co-pilot. We executive produced the film. Will Catlett just murders it, like, and so forth and so on. Like, so many the cast is incredible. And again, it's just one of those films that I'm really excited for people to experience.
And you said it was, okay, sure.
Keisha, he didn't mean to forget you. To forget you. It was
don't worry
Keisha
about
Epps.
Now your wife.
But that's what I was gonna say.
I was working with your wife in the movie.
Because you
now.
said not just as your wife, your daughter did music
Yeah.
for the movie too.
Yeah, so my wife, this is her first film, but she's been putting in the work too. She's been training with the great Tasha Smith for years.
Tasha, salute to Tasha.
You know what I mean? Salute to Tasha. That's my sis. And it just came about organically. Like as we were trying to figure out, well, who could be good for this? One day Charles calls me like, you know who'd be good for this role? And I'm like, who? He's like, your wife. And I was like, damn, I should have thought of that. You know. And then even with the music thing, because we did it on a shoestring budget, so, you know, we would be having conversations, and I was just like, you know, what are we going to do about music and which scenes do you want songs in and stuff like that? And he was like, because my daughter Kamari, my youngest daughter, she's an aspiring singer-songwriter, and he was like, well, we'll figure something out. Just let them cook something up. So her and my wife went and cooked up something fire. And
She has 2 songs in the movie.
yeah.
That's dope.
From an actor perspective, she plays your sister-in-law in the movie.
Sister-in-law, yeah.
That's a different dynamic from wife. So how does that change when you're acting? How do you adjust?
For me, there was no adjustment. It was more about, you know, making her feel comfortable. And that was one of the other things. And Charles is a big part of that in terms of creating an environment on set, with not only with the cast, but with the crew.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Ludo, our DP, 5-foot Italian woman that was 6 months
6
pregnant.
months pregnant.
When we was filming, and she's carrying around these cameras and this, that, and the other, but she was about that action, you know what I'm saying? But even so, going back to Keisha, just creating an environment where, and in a professional aspect, I was, you know, hands off, like, you know, that's his job. Like, you know, I would see things like we doing certain scenes, but I'm like, I ain't trying to have an argument when we rap in the car.
You never said, "Nah, babe, you know, you could do this better."
Nah, I just
Smart man.
you know, I just said was like, that's not my job. You know what I mean? I can have an opinion. That's his job.
Yeah.
You know. But what was great about our synergy is sometimes I would see certain things, and then I would see Charles, yo, Keish, come here real quick, and then they go in the room, and then she come out on some whole different. You know what I mean? So it all worked out.
Dope.
Yeah.
I saw on the Today Show with Holden and Jenna, you said that breaking up off the table
Yeah.
helped your marriage. Expound on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's as simple as that. Like, when you take breaking up off the table in a relationship, in a marriage, whatever you want to call it, it changes the whole dynamic of how you deal with conflict. It's not about the happy times. It's about when the turbulence is there. And for me, it really impacted me, like, because you don't have that card to pull out no more. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So it's this argument, conflict, misunderstanding, whatever it is, you're handling it in a way where, well, we're going to be together after this. Where I feel like in a lot of relationships, the pacing of it is you could always just be like, I'm out, you know, or they can do the same. And it is challenging, but I think it's been great for us because you just handle things with care. You know, you really consider, you know, your feelings and your thoughts before you communicate. You know, and you realize, like, this is my wife is one of my best friends, so I don't want to talk down to her, or even if I'm right, you know, about whatever. But it's all trivial, right? We have a beautiful family. We have so much to be thankful for. Let's lean into that more than the, you know, when shit is hitting the fan.
It makes me think of that Nikki Giovanni, James Baldwin conversation. And essentially what Nikki was saying in that conversation was, you figure it out in every other relationship.
Right.
So when you come home, figure it out with me.
Right.
All right? You ain't willing to leave that job, right? Because you know you need to keep money on the table. You know that's the best thing for you, I guess, at the time. Figure it out.
Right.
And that's what when you said that, that's what it made me realize, like, oh, yeah, like, when you love somebody and you're committed to them and y'all are saying you're going to do this life thing together,
Right.
the exit ain't the option. Let's just figure out a way to make things.
This life thing. That's powerful because, you know, it brings it back to family. And I also operate from my aspect, God forbid, but if something were to happen to me, I want her to be good. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, I want my kids to be good, but it's just like I kind of move from that aspect too. So you know, and look, we go through what we go through. We young, you know what I'm saying? We ain't never had this type of money, or we ain't never had that car, whatever, and we supposed to go through these trials and tribulations. That's a part of life. But when you get a partner that's willing to walk through that fire with you and still love you, that's just a blessing from God.
That's right.
Like, God is showing you, yo, I'm here through her, you know, so you have to have the courage to commit fully, you know, and realize that the rest of it is all like junk food. You know what I mean? I want a home cooked plate.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I was
When it
going to
come
ask,
to
you know,
love.
this year is the 30-year anniversary of Juice.
30 years.
That's crazy.
Now, with all these
Damn.
remakes and you know, Bel Air, they did Fresh Prince over, and you hear all these different. Would you ever think about doing that over?
You see where the segue is going?
Mm.
You see the little. They're really good at what they do.
Answer the man's question.
Nah. I think you could. You know, there is one film that I've done, which I won't say now, but that I could see it, and we're trying to put that together. But
Loving basketball?
That's another one.
Low hanging fruit.
Yep.
Nah,
I can see it.
Now you know
I can see that
what?
one too, yeah.
Me and Gina Prince Blackwood, who wrote and directed that, we actually had a conversation about that, and we both agreed that it's like certain songs you just don't touch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Reasons.
Right.
It's one of those songs you just don't cover, don't make a remake, just leave it alone.
Correct.
You know? And saying this humbly. You see what I'm saying? But just leave it alone. And I think Juice is just one of those films that you just leave it alone. I mean, it's just low-hanging fruit. Like, and no disrespect to Juice, but nah. I mean, you could do a new generation version. You could be like, oh, Bishop had a baby nobody ever knew about. And blah. It's like, it's all too easy. It's just like, let's keep progressing because we have so many more stories to tell. So,
You know, I unpacked on my TV talk show last season. I unpacked Juice from a mental health perspective because the older I got, I realized how many people in that movie were actually dealing with mental health issues. You know what I mean? And then I read somewhere that Bishop actually in another version, he committed suicide.
it was something like that. Well, it wasn't that he committed suicide. It was the real thing was, does Q drop him intentionally off the roof, or as we had it in the film, he slipped out of his grasp, which I thought was a more powerful ending.
And they talk about, throughout the whole movie, they talk about Pac being crazy.
Yeah.
And they talk about his father being crazy, and then
Yeah.
Rodamez makes mention to he got violated in jail, so he might have been dealing with those type of issues. And it's just like, it was so much different underlying things we didn't see in Juice at the time.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, and that's why I think it's such a beautiful. I mean, salute to Ernest Dickerson. It's such a beautiful piece because he's just planting those seeds, and to come back to The Devil You Know, it's like we're trying to do the same thing in that way, planting those seeds. Ours are a little bit more blunt and brash, you know what I mean, because of the subject matter in the film, but it's really planting those seeds and giving the people something to think about. But it's like entertaining and informing simultaneously.
And the reason Loving Basketball would be great is simply because it did end almost like you could go anywhere with that. Y'all got a family now. People love you and Sanai's chemistry on screen. Y'all might got a couple kids that play basketball.
Yeah, but see, that's the easy way to go. You would have to break that up like they're not together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They got a kid, and how does that work? I don't know. It's just, you're right. There's so many different ways to go with it.
Yeah.
So let's just leave it alone.
But did your character realize, like, damn, Pops was just a man? Cause I was to say, when I watched that movie now, I was like, damn, I did that to my Pops. I confronted my Pops the same exact way. You cheating on Mom? My Pops looked me in the eye and said, one day you're going to understand. And I made my own mistakes as I got older, and I understood.
Right.
So it's like, do you explore that dynamic maybe? I don't know.
No, for me, that's interesting what you just brought up, because for me, I feel like the character did sort of get to a point of acceptance of, you know what I mean? He's just a man, like because his pops was in the NBA, like he was that dude when he was younger, But I think it's like and those are the type of at least thoughts and feelings that as an actor you have to bring to the scenes that are not on the page. You know what I mean? And you have to deal with what's in front of you and try to get into the minutia of the emotion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were saying about mental health, if you think about that run of films, Juice, Boys in the Hood,
That's right.
Menace to
Menace to
Society.
Society, that's right.
If you look at all of those movies, they were in distress.
That's right. That's right.
You had to normalize
Right.
in that. So I think you could say that era of filmmaking for Black folks, even if you go to Do the Right Thing, that era of filmmaking for Black people was about surviving what was going on around them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think that's a really dope idea.
Man, that's interesting you say that, Charles, because it's like we were looking at those movies as just culture, but what we did was turn our trauma into culture. And at the time, I didn't even look at that as trauma.
Yeah,
That's
because
just
if
the
you
way
think
things
about
were.
the Bronx, where hip hop comes from,
Yeah.
buildings being torn down, music being taken out of the schools, that trauma became hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think that there's a whole arc of emotional trauma moving through our art, you know, that we can see, even if you go back to James Baldwin, even if you go back to, you know, Ralph Ellison, you know, I think that most of it has been about us finding a way to find normal, you know.
I was thinking about when I seen your name pop up on the schedule to do the interview. I fly a lot. Now I'm seeing more and more of black movies on planes. Love and Basketball, Juice. How important is having a good attorney when you're doing it? Because you have to get residuals and all that when them movies pop up on planes and all that. Has to.
Or not.
Or not.
You know, I mean, that's really all you need in this business is a good attorney. You know, someone who, you know, I like to creatively think around things. So, you know, obviously at this point I know how to read a contract myself, but, you know, the law game is its own verbiage and blah, 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 blah. But I'm always like, well, what about this? Oh, nobody ever asked for that. Well, I mean, the worst they can say is no. You know what I mean? And at this point in my career, it's like I'm solely about ownership. I have to have a piece of it. I don't have to own the whole thing, but you know, if something happens to me, this got to go to my kids and their kids and so forth and so on. And it's really difficult to do in Hollywood. It's way easier to do in music because music is such a sort of solitary thing, right? You don't need, it could just be me and you, and then you hit send, and then we good. In our business, there's unions, and there's this, and there's all of these other criteria that come into play that you got to kind of play the game. But it's a game, so you know you play it. And again, like going back to the ownership piece, like with Charles, you know, I know when we've had these discussions, like this man, if you look at his resume, his face should be on billboards everywhere. Everybody should know who he is. You know what I'm saying? Period. Now, I'm gonna say this for him because he's a humble dude, but it's just the truth. But the thing is, he speaks the truth in certain rooms, and it makes them uncomfortable. So, you know, for me, it's like being rebellious is my nature. So, you know what I'm saying? So when we had the opportunity to before the opportunity came, when we were just talking about it, I was like, yo, I'm in with you. We in the trenches, and we gonna get this done. And I think it sucks that it took us this long, but I believe in divine order and divine poetry. So when the timing was right, I guess the universe opened up like, yo, it's time for y'all to deliver this film.
What's more fulfilling? Is it more fulfilling to get a big budget movie made or to do something like this, you know, where you invest in your own money, hiring your own people? What's more fulfilling?
Well, it depends on how big the bag is. No, I mean, listen, it's a balance, right? It's a balance of both, because the thing that comes with quote unquote ownership is greater responsibility, you know, and you're responsible for other people and things of that nature. So for me, at this point, was more fulfilling. I understand that it's not about me. The ownership is not about me per se having ownership. It's just having something that will go on. So like Envy just said, when he watching these movies on the plane, they're selling those IPs that I don't get a piece of that sale. Residuals come from the union. The union and residuals go down the longer the thing is playing. So you might see a check for $15. It make you mad. Like, the paper costs more to print.
Absolutely.
You know, but that ownership piece, when they're like, oh, we're gonna make a deal with Delta to have it in for the first quarter for $25 million. Who has points on the back end? They gonna get a piece. You see what I'm saying? And so it's just it's a ebb and flow, because you know sometimes, hey, if they come with a huge bag, take that bag. It's like everybody doing these Netflix deals. There's a reason when they be like, here's $100 million. Be like, yeah, let me tally this up. It's gonna take a long time for me to try to make something like that. Let me just take this bag. You know they're gonna own everything. You could try to make this weasel your way, you know what I mean, to have some ownership, but with that particular corporation, they want outright ownership. And that's also why a lot of the younger creatives are not going there. not playing in that system. So it's an ebb and flow.
Well, digital has ebbed it out too, because when you think about music, the introduction of the 4-track was what changed how people had to look at musicians, because now you can make it, sell it out of the back of your car. You don't have to go through the system.
I have to go to a studio anymore, right?
Exactly. So now with the advent of digital on this side, you're going to have more people, because if you think about what he was talking about, you think of Juice, Love, and Basketball, In Too Deep. That path was narrow. But now with digital, you get Issa Rae, you get, Lena Waithe, you get Justin Simeon, because you can make a movie off of this now, and you don't have to go through the system. The system has to come to you. So you can have more ownership. And I think that's the thing that's more important when you think about a big budget versus something small and intimate, is that you have ownership. My first movie I made for $300,000, Things Never Said. Omari's in it, Shanola Hampton's in it. That movie belongs to my oldest child.
Wow.
My second movie.
Daybreak?
No, it's called Cold Hard Truth.
Okay.
Dorian Missick, Simone Missick, that belongs to my youngest daughter.
Wow.
So, and they're in my trust for them. So having that sort of control is way more important than having somebody throw a big budget at you so that you eventually do work for them.
With all the movies that you did, what was so hard? Because it's not like you're a new director. You have history. You have hits. You have movies and sitcoms and things on the board that have made a lot of money. Why was it so difficult to get this one done?
Blackness.
I thought you was going to point at me.
No, I mean, because there's still the belief that African-American dramas don't sell, right? But that belief is set. Everybody tells stories, right? And the narrative of the studio system is, we're going to tell you one thing, and when it changes, we're not going to tell you that it changed, right? So, for example, HBO Max, we're giving you these movies for free. Instead of putting them in the theater, they're going to show up on HBO Max.
Right.
My man, you got your you got your calculator on your phone? Do 30,000. Do 30,000 times $15.99.
30,000 times $15.99.
How much is it?
47,970,000.
Okay, so if you got 30,000 people who follow HBO Max, that's what they're making a month. So when they tell you
a month,
but they make $400 million a month off of subs.
Wow.
Off of what?
Subscription.
Okay.
So is the movie really free?
Yeah, that's real.
But they're going to sell it to you.
Right.
It is. They're going to say, yo, you get to see Dune
For free, but
at
you
your
pay a
house.
subscription, right?
Right. So think about that, like HBO over 30 years. Think about all the people who have HBO that don't even watch it, but they pay for it. So when the narrative is set, people like to stick to the narrative. The narrative for us is black folks don't go see X. They don't talk about that we've been conditioned to only want to see X. And that's why they put only X out. And when you come along and say, hey, I want to break that narrative, they go, what's wrong with you? Don't do that. The reason that we had money for it earlier, but we didn't have enough. And I was like, I'm not pushing that needle. I'm not pushing it forward. I'm not pushing that button to make it until we get a budget that's at least ample enough that we can afford this person and that person. So going into rooms a lot of times and saying, like he was talking about the contracts. Guys, I read the contracts. I study this stuff. I know exactly why Soderbergh makes movies for $5 million. I know why Jason Blum makes movies for $1 million to $2 million. Give us the same thing. You're giving us profit, you're giving us money, you're giving us ownership, but you're going to have to give us something. You're going to have to respect what this is. So when I have these conversations, they go, he's a difficult person.
Because he knows.
Yeah.
He's educated.
Yeah.
Correct.
You don't want no educated Negro in here.
You know,
Okay,
and listen, a lot of the support that I've had has come from the majority culture, but they also go, well, here's a lane. Don't you want to stay in this lane? I go, no, because all of the movies that you gave me to watch when I was sitting at home made me want to make movies.
Yeah.
You didn't say you only get to make these in selling me those movies. So you can't sell me or tell me now that I can't make movies like the ones that I've seen.
Right.
That's so interesting, man. And I think about, I don't know why this came to mind when you was talking, but like something like Lovecraft Country, right? Not necessarily a black TV show, but it's starring a black cast. It's a phenomenal show. Loved it. Nominated for all these awards. HBO doesn't bring it back. Why?
There's 1,000 reasons, but mostly I would say the last hurdle in this business is what he was talking about, ownership. And I won an NAACP award for Roots. And when I walked up and grabbed the award, I said, guys, it's all about ownership. You're looking at think about this. Tyler Perry got the deal that he got with Viacom. Most people get deals from the studio, not the corporation that owns the studio, but they recognize his value, right? And they go, no, we're not couching you here. We're saying to you, you're just as important, or if not more important, than a lot of these people that are coming through. Mm-hmm. So with Lovecraft, you get a situation where they own it, right? So if something doesn't go well, do we want to deal with this next season? Do we want to engage in this next season? And the optics are, when it looks like us, we're more troublemakers than we are just standing our ground. So there's a possibility it could have been because there was a disagreement.
Right. Yeah, we had Ajane up here, and Ajane said it was because they didn't think black people would continue to watch science fiction. Like that's something strange like that. Like, huh?
But those random thoughts. Again, you can say that and that be true, but the next thing you have to say is, what have we been feeding black people to make them not think that this is something that's viable? Mm-hmm. They don't. That's the part of the stats and tests and demographics that they don't want to answer.
Gotcha. That's the part right there. And it could have been, like you just said, a simple disagreement. Right. These people, they always say, oh, it's just business. Nah, it's always personal because we're dealing with human beings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So somebody could just like somebody in the high ups could have left and somebody new comes in like, yeah, I'm just not feeling it. Even though it's profitable and people want to watch it and so forth and so on. So you just never know. But that's part of being in corporate America, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just part of the design of the system that we live in. So we deal with it. You know what I mean?
I was going to ask, what are your thoughts on, you guys are from the days of you put out a movie. It's a big release. It's a red carpet. You're excited to go out and see it. You look for those weekend numbers to see who went out from the community and seen the movies. Mm-hmm. To now, like you said, now you can go on Netflix, you can go on HBO Max, so you don't get that feeling. How does that feel to both of you guys? And especially you, because when you make the film, the sound effects, the lights, the speakers, the sound, like everything matters. It's art.
But
you go in the crib, you ain't gonna have all that.
Well, so here's the thing, and I think Tarantino said this: the movies that made an impact on me early on, I saw them on TV. I saw Citizen Kane on TV. I saw, Close Encounters the first time. I think I saw it on TV. So I feel like the outlets, like when you say you're a writer, are you a writer because you write a haiku? Are you a writer because you write a poem, novel, short story, film? But as long as you get it out, it's going to make its impact. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's all of it. Like I don't need a red carpet. I just need it to be seen. And sometimes what he was talking about with imagery and the long-lasting quality of it is when I make every movie I've made, I say to myself, it may not get seen now. It might not get seen until after I die, but it'll get seen.
Right.
So that's the most important thing, because every movie that influenced me, I never met the person. I never engaged with the actors. I never was a part of the red carpet. I saw Cooley High the first time. It was a 3:30 movie. And it impacted who I was as a screenwriter because Preach became a screenwriter. So if you think about it globally, if from a mental state of satisfaction, the satisfaction is having your art be known. Right? You think about Vincent van Gogh. There's a great movie, Willem Dafoe plays Vincent van Gogh, and he was like, my art will never have an impact on people. Fitzgerald, writing Great Gatsby, died in an apartment on Melrose and Fairfax. All of his books were out of print. So you have to think about the longevity of it and not just that one moment.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Now, I was just gonna say I agree with everything Charles just said. But there's nothing like touching the people, and I think with a film like this, The Devil You Know, it's so. I guess the word would be interactive. Again, like I said, like people
yelling at the screen,
and all this, that, and the other, and then afterwards, we talking with the people, and everybody's just the conversation continues. And it's also interesting because obviously we're dealing with the are we out of COVID, this, that, and the other, people going back to theaters, having that. But people still, there's nothing like seeing something on the big screen. Like people still love that communal experience, I think. Obviously it's like you got to take your kids, this is coming out, and, they love sitting in the seats, getting the popcorn. Like the whole culture of going to a movie still exists. And then, you can watch it at the crib. But to your point, it's interesting about that because I noticed with my kids, there's certain movies they want to see in a theater, and then there's certain movies let's watch that at the crib. Like they want to be more comfortable and sort of, but it doesn't have the glitz and glamour of the, But it's just where we are now. It's just another, to me, part of the ecosystem. So everything can coexist in that way.
And we're also in a different dynamic. How big is your TV?
That's a very good question.
My TV's pretty big.
Yeah, it's probably the size of this room.
Right? And now you can get these home systems. It's convenience.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's all a business. So they're going to, I hate to go way back, but studios, the biggest issue that studios had was that they used to own theaters. And then there was a law that came in because the B movies weren't getting a chance to play in these theaters because Paramount would say, we don't want people playing in our theaters. So they went, you got to sell off the theaters. They've been waiting for streaming. They just didn't have a name for it.
Gotcha.
Because now it's like owning the theaters, right? And I'm sure you cut your cable and you probably pay more now for all of these different apps. So they don't care where you see it as long as you see it.
Gotcha.
And I think a premiere, while fantastic, is pretty much just for the people who made it on that night.
Yeah, about for lack of a better term, direct themselves off.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like, yo, we did this.
Yeah.
Right? And then you get to do the next one because people see it, however they see it.
Gotcha.
That's interesting too, because it's like new traditions are being created. Like we do Friday nights in the house watching movies. Like I've watched Encanto every Friday night for like the past month. And like my kids love the fact they can go watch Encanto, then go on YouTube and watch random Encanto videos over and over. We couldn't do that back in the day with the movies we loved.
And that's the new interaction he's talking about.
Right. I think that's the beautiful part about technology. It's accessible.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like some privileged experience. And to me, that's the fun part of it. Like to watch the kids and even us, right? We all got the apps and the this and the that, and you could just, the convenience of it, you know? But I think it's all part of the ecosystem is just getting bigger. Like there's certain things you prefer to watch on YouTube versus watching on at the crib on a big screen versus watching in an actual movie theater. Then there's those other joints you like, we going to the movies to see this. You know what I'm saying? Like you want to have that experience. And so it's just, in a sense, rolling with the punches and the evolution of the business side of it it plays a big part.
And I think you need both, because I think I think it's something like Luke Cage. Like I'm a huge Marvel guy.
Yep.
I never thought in my life I'd ever see a Luke Cage anything on any screen. I don't think we ever get Luke Cage if there's no streaming services. I don't think they would ever made a Luke Cage movie.
And we shut down the internet.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. You know, but like you're saying, if you limit yourself to the platform, you also limit the stories you get to tell.
Right. Get it.
And so why limit the stories you want to tell? Because maybe they're not going to. I mean, if you think about it, remember, Wesley was trying to get Black Panther made.
Yeah.
Way back.
Right? And so getting Luke Cage made as a TV show probably changed some minds about making it as a movie.
Not probably, it did. We know this for certain. You know what I'm saying? The business is what it is, but it's about progression. You know, so when I see Puff with Revolt or how Jay had Tidal or, you know what I'm saying, even what you guys are doing, because ultimately it all leads to the distribution point. That's what we got to own. You know what I'm saying? We was taught, oh, you got to get manufacturing. You got to press up your own CDs and all of that type of stuff, not thinking about where you're going to sell it at. You know what I mean? And you got the Master P's, and we got people who are legendary and moving the Too Shorts, like, you know, moving out the trunk. But now, when we dealing with this, we still dealing with their platforms. You know what I'm saying? When we gonna get behind ourselves and have our own platform? Obviously, we got BET Plus and so forth, respect to them. But I'm saying, like, they're
But I think digital
who?
makes
They're owned by who?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You
But
know
I
what I'm
think
saying?
digital changes that, right? Because I didn't know you guys until YouTube came into existence. And I watch you all the time. That's how I met Claude Anderson. That's why I bought his book, you know. And so when you think of the dream situation, you have to widen the dream. You have to say, I need to get to my audience. I need to create my audience, however that comes about. And I'm going to celebrate the fact that I actually get my story out.
Right.
How did that work for you, Charles? Because, you know, you like you talk about Luke Cage, but, you know, you also was a part of the Inhumans and, you know, Sons of Anarchy. These are big. Sons of Anarchy. Sons of Anarchy became such a big franchise, but these are other two are already big titles in the comic world. How did that work for you? Like, as far as, like, I guess back end and things like that.
Well, not because I was a player. I was a cog in the wheel, but that's what made me sit down at my kitchen table and say to my wife, we're making this film when I made Things Never Said. Because at the end of the day, you can learn this business or you can create for this business. And so I decided to learn it. And in learning it, it's like I go back to, like, Citizen Kane cost $400,000. Hollywood Shuffle cost $300,000. Halloween cost $300,000. Paranormal Activity cost $15,000. And that's when you get to have ownership of these things, right? So being in the business has been like a master class that I've taken and applied to the things that I do outside, you know. And that's why I'm always game for making an indie movie, owning my own equipment and things like that. So you learn, you see that if I say, Envy, the movie you want to make is going to cost $40 million, you're going to be like, yo, I thought it was going to cost 15. This is great. And you're going to move forward in joy because they gave you that money. And when you're done, what are you going to do? Okay, here it is, back to you. And then they're going to say, all right, well, here's a cut. And then you're going to be happy about that cut until you hear, well, the movie made $700 million.
Right.
Yeah.
And my cut is this.
Right.
So the same way you talk about real estate and stuff like that, that's how I see what I do. I look at it like, how can I learn from the situation that I'm going into? And sometimes, how can I take the money from the situation that I'm going into and put it into things that I own?
I've seen two models like that I've liked. I loved what Jordan Peele did with Get Out. And I loved what Nate Parker did with Birth of a Nation. You know, even though.
But that was outside investors.
Yeah.
Right? And then went to Sundance, and then it sold for $17 million. Right? That's off of a $7 million investment. You can't, and I said this the other day, creatives who keep pushing off the business part eventually suffer. You get to be more creative the more you understand the business side of what you're doing. And understanding the business side means that after Nate did that, and then he went through what he went through, he turned around and made that smaller movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it premiered at Cannes, and then it went straight to VOD.
Mm-hmm.
But the movie made a gang of money.
Mm-hmm.
And he got his next movie out so much so that it rebounded him. Now he's making another feature that will probably come out in the theaters. It's because he understood the ebbs and flows of the business part, as opposed to just being a creative going, oh, I got smacked in the mouth and I don't know what I'm going to do.
That's right.
You know, and that model exists time and time again. I listen to all of these podcasts of all of these indie filmmakers, but I damn sure listen to Jason Blum, because Jason Blum says, I live in the 5 million and under space, where people off of their egos are saying, yo, no, I got to have 20, I got to have 40 or whatever. And under the $5 million space, he said when they made Get Out, he goes to everybody and says, you're going to make scale. But in success, you will make money.
You got to explain what scale is.
Scale is like the bottom of what a union says you get paid.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, I have this thing that I like to do. When I get the checks, I make a video of going to FedEx, and I send the video to the actor or the writer and say, your check is in the mail. And he said, off of Get Out, Catherine Keener, who played the woman who hypnotized him, he sent her a check for $7 million.
Yeah, Lil Rel said they came over to his house with a box, like a gift box, and a greeter, and
Exactly.
his check was in the box.
Right?
He
But
said how
all
much
of
it was,
those
I'm sure it was
people
much.
who get those boxes or those videos are people who are business-minded, that says, I have to invest in this as opposed to just be in it.
Right.
Right? So everything that I've been on, when I came in, my first show was a show called Third Watch.
Wow.
Right? And the showrunner, we were on a cart one day going to lunch, and he said, have you thought about developing? And I went, no, I'm just trying to figure this out. And he said, you should start developing. You should start thinking about it now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 35. I came into the business late, 36. Well, my next show was such a fiasco that I left, went home, and wrote my first pilot. When during that time, nobody was writing spec pilots. Like, they write them all the time now.
Mm-hmm.
But the only one that I knew about was a show called The Barn, which became The Shield. And just off of understanding that he wrote that Sean Ryan wrote that on as a spec, it made me write my pilot as a spec.
Spec meaning for free.
For free.
Mm-hmm.
And my agents told me, nobody does that. And I was like, why? If you can give me a reason that works in my brain, then maybe we can have a conversation. But I'm doing this. I'm taking control of my narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote it, sent it out. A company came and said, we don't have any development money, but can we have a free option? And all I wanted it to do was just get me different jobs from the ones that I was heading into. I said, sure. You guys seem to be honorable people. 6 months later, they were like, hey, we're making this pilot. So within the span of 5 years of being in the business, I had my first pilot made because I looked at it as a business decision. And it changed my career. And once that changed my career, I started getting these shows that you're talking about. But it's the creative side of me that I go, hey, I need you to take a seat for a second because I need to see how we can navigate this so you get to be more creative.
I want to ask y'all both a question. Just as Black Hollywood royalty, right? You've both been in Hollywood for a long time. You are too on the executive side. Stop it. What are your thoughts on the Will Smith Chris Rock altercation from a Black Hollywood perspective and just a black male perspective?
I mean, for me, I'm gonna keep it simple. I got respect for both of those men, and I think that they'll work that out, behind closed doors. And it was what's that French saying? Faux pas,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just some moment. We're human beings. We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
sometimes things happen. You know what I mean?
You ever look at yourself and say, what would I do in that situation?
I mean,
on both sides of the fence?
We all do. But I mean, my favorite of all time so far it wasn't even Kanye. It was ODB. Love the kids.
Right.
With the suit on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, it is what it is, and blessings to both of them and both of their families.
What about you, Charles?
I think a great lesson can be learned from it. Going back to what you were saying about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
When we were having a conversation, and I said, Will has unpacked a lot this year, more than he ever has, and finally came out of the perfect image. And I think maybe if this had been a year ago, he wouldn't have done that. But where his mental state is, like if you watch that YouTube joint that he did,
Absolutely.
Best Shape of My Life,
Yeah.
I told, it starts off with him breaking down.
That's right.
And I think that, it can be a cautionary tale because this business is all about making you feel like you're one of one.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem that comes with that is that you kind of remove yourself from yourself, and you can't recognize things that are coming, and then shit happens. Excuse my French.
Mm-hmm.
And you're left with in the aftermath. I think that people can look at that moment, and I feel really bad for Chris, but I think you can look at that moment and learn from it that you might not want to work on being perfect. You might want to work on being you.
Yeah.
And whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can be taken from it.
You said something really deep real quick that I wanted to jump on is when you say this business makes you feel like you're one of one. And that's such a true statement. And I'm bringing that back to the ownership piece. One of the biggest problems is that we don't work with each other. We're there's a piece of cheese in the middle of a labyrinth, and all the rats is going to scurrying to get the cheese, and then you get the little piece and try to drag it, you know what I mean, and take it over there instead of working together. So when we talking about, what you do for a living, what we do for a living, if he didn't believe in me and I didn't believe in him, this film would have never got made. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And we, as an energy force, were able to attract the other pieces. That it just starts building on top, and within our culture, you see it a lot more in music. You know what I mean? Where people mess with each other on a business tip, but we just don't see it in general. Do you see that in real estate like that?
Not
You know what I mean? Do you see that in Fortune 500 like that?
Mm.
That's what we got to start doing. You know what I mean? So we could stop complaining about the system. This is why I agree with, I forget where he said it, but when Tyler Perry said, you worrying about having a seat at their table, we got to build our own table. Mm-hmm. I'm all for that because that's what it comes down to. But we could walk and chew gum at the same time. So we could have a seat at that table, but I'm over here building my own table at the same time, simultaneously. So that's what it comes down to. And even, I know we was just coming off of the Chris and Will thing, but, we just got to rock with each other more, man. Mm-hmm. On a real level, and realize that, hey, when you at the plate, you ain't gonna hit a home run every time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're afraid to fail together.
That's right.
But
all we worried about is succeeding together. It's like, if we're gonna make this investment, it's all a chance at the end of the day. But you want to fail with them, but you don't want to fail with your own.
And the other thing too is let's not forget that Tom Cruise audio from Mission Impossible 7, where he had a meltdown.
Yeah.
Christian Bale,
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
I don't watch Mel Gibson movies because of that conversation he had with his girlfriend, where he was hoping that 9 of us would show up at her door. Mm-hmm. But you also have to understand that spotlight is bright. Mm-hmm. And what do they tell you when you're on set? Don't get near that light, is hot. And too many people think that they can get closer and closer to the light. And then when they get burned, they don't know, because nobody's going to protect you if they think they can make money off of you. Mm-hmm. They'll protect you from yourself to make money off of you. But are they really looking at your heart and your soul and saying, hey, that's more important than the dollar amount you're putting in my account? Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen that often in this business. That's why we have so many suicides and, you know, alcoholic deaths and drug deaths and things like that. And they move on. This showrunner I know signed a $50 million contract, and 3 weeks later went to sleep, never woke up. And I said to a friend of mine, do you think the TV shows that he is running are going to stop shooting for 3 or 4 days in honor of him?
Yeah.
Do you think that they're going to introduce him in the show, like start the show with, we lost a very great friend? No, they're going to be like, the audience is expecting this at 8 o'clock. We give them this at 8 o'clock. So I think that when we talk about this, our businesses, you know, music, whatever is creative, again, it comes back to understanding mental health. It comes back to understanding they will push the narrative forward as long as it brings them cheese.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And what he's talking about, looking out for each other, is very important, because once you get in those camps, guess what you become? One of one.
Mm.
You're the only black dude, or you're the only black woman, or you're the only black non-binary person.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of go, yeah, but this is what I have to do to get to. No, you don't. You really don't. But you don't know that because you keep following that narrative.
Wow, a lot of gems today.
Make sure y'all go watch The Devil You Know, man.
Comes out this Friday, and we appreciate you guys for joining us and giving us some gems and that
Thank
jewelry
you.
this morning.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you. Thank
And
you.
where's
As
this going?
always.
It's in theaters?
In AMC Theaters.
AMC
Okay.
Theaters exclusively. Shout out to a sister named Nicole Denson Randolph, who is in charge of inclusivity. She was the one who got behind this. And I mean, she's a friend of mine. We were assistants together. And this is what we're talking about, is that you spread the wealth by spreading yourself to people who you can help and they can help you. It's what the main culture has done in these creative businesses from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
You know, they just change their last name sometimes.
That's right.
And so you don't know that they're cousins, or, you know, you don't know that they're brothers. You don't know that, you know, like people are always surprised when they find out that Nick Cage is Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah.
You know, but that family thing matters to them. That connectivity matters. And we got to get more toward that. Instead of looking that way, we got to look this way.
Absolutely.
Shout out to Keisha and Kamari.
Yeah.
On that note.
Let us know how we can fund the screening or something, man. Let's do that for this Friday.
Just fun and screening.
Just fund the screening.
Yeah.
It's done. Yeah, it's
Give me
done.
your joints. I send you the list of theaters and you can see.
Yeah, for sure.
please.
Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely.
All right. Well, it's Omar Epps. It's Charles Murray. It's the
I
Breakfast
appreciate it.
Club.
Appreciate
I
y'all.
appreciate
Thank you, bro.
No
Thank
doubt.
you. Thank you both.
Yeah, give me that. I'm up.